Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at the full strawberry moon, which is occurring on June 3rd, obviously 2023, and it will be at 10:41 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you're in Europe and other places, it will be on the 4th of June, I guess. And this is going to be at 13 degrees of Sagittarius. At every full moon, there is an opposition coming from the sun at the same degree. So we're looking at this opposition between Gemini and Sagittarius. And in astrology, these two signs rule houses that deal with information. The third house, or Gemini's domain, is the house of, the media, including social media. And so it is that what we would, call mundane knowledge or information. And it's very fast paced. You think about the town crier or something like that. And it can be other types of education, like elementary education and things of that nature, trainings. And the ninth house is supposed to be higher education. So it is college, university, whatever you want to call it. It is the spiritual wisdom that transcends some kind of school, if you will, on the physical level. And so both of these are, it's like opposing one another. And because Sag is the sign that the full moon is in, this is where the emphasis lies, because something is building to a crescendo. So, but it is opposing the everyday information that we take in. So suffice it to say, at the very least, we may discover something. There's some kind of truth, which Sagittarius represents, may come out. And I realized before I started recording that I have been saying this over and over again, but the truth is that we have been having things coming out. It just hasn't been so overwhelmingly dramatic that it just takes over everything. So it's important to realize that if you're sitting there saying, okay, when, people keep promising we're going to have all this disclosure, but nothing is happening. No, it actually is. It's just dribs and drabs. And, I live in the United States, so that is the predominant news that pertains to me, obviously. And recently, they said that these people, I don't know if it was all the people in Congress or just senators, but they've been given satellite phones. So that suggests something to do with the internet. Now, the internet would be more Gemini, but here we have this opposition, and it might be that the moon or Sag is taking over, so that mundane knowledge is almost like taking a back seat to something that we know as wisdom. And this is something that I think is inevitable at some point, because people have often talked about, will there be some kind of internet disruption? Whether it's due to some kind of natural event, or whether it is deliberately taken down. And so many people are dependent, or they feel that they're dependent on the internet. And yet what happens when their local carrier breaks down? I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm tempted to. You have to wing it. You have to just live your life. And so the point is that information might be disrupted, but the real information, which is the full moon, can bring really intuitive insights, is highlighted. And in Sag, we're talking about wisdom. If the full moon happened to be in Gemini, then the emphasis would definitely be on the mundane news variety. And by the way, when I say mundane, it's not to discount that type of news, because this is our everyday life and it does matter. But sometimes we have to look at the bigger picture, and that's what Sagittarius is all about, is the bigger picture. And this is what happens when we view our life from a spiritual perspective, because it is easy to get bogged down in everyday details and the things of this world. But when we kind of pull back and we can see that there may be that might be part of the plan, whatever these things are that are occurring, and it could be a variety of things. So I'm just looking at some of the aspects and the planets in various signs. We have Mercury in Taurus, which emphasizes communication of a constructive variety, but also particularly dealing with finance. As a matter of fact, I noticed an opposition between Venus and Pluto. And Venus is the ruler of the second house of finances. And Pluto can be about control. So with this opposition, there could be this, it's almost like this wrestling of personal finances versus the collective, which Pluto would, Pluto is one of the rulers of the eighth house, which is shared resources. Again, in the United States, we are dealing with the debt ceiling crisis, if you will. Some people might say it's a manufactured crisis, but whatever. It is happening, and that could be coming into play big time. I mean, it already is, but there might be some big developments at that time. And Venus is in Cancer, at a late degree of Cancer. That was another thing, too, with that Venus-Pluto opposition. On a personal level, watch out for any kind of power struggles and manipulating, or being manipulated. It doesn't mean that you're doing it in relationships with money or with the emotions. With Cancer, there is that kind of clingy type of devotion that it may be sincere, but it may also be very smothering to others. And we have to say that Sagittarius is about freedom. And so it could be even the most ardent lover or loyal partner. So like a Taurus, for instance, can feel this sudden desire to kind of break free because, and I used Taurus specifically because Taurus is experiencing a Uranian transit in the sign of Taurus, and that can make even a very possessive Taurus let loose the grip of their need to be in a particular partnership. Mars is in Leo, and that in the challenging on the challenging side of things, that can lead to somebody who is, in their ego. I'm not saying that Leo is just totally about that, but Mars can be this kind of impetuous action that is taken, and also forcefulness. And there is that diva quality with Leo that can lead to ego issues. I'm trying to see here if Mars, and Mars is, there are some hard angles to Mars. Opposition between Mars and Pluto is one to really watch out for. This is occurring on the weekend. So I was making a comment last month about the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and this one in particular is happening on the weekend. So that the reason I say weekend is because that's when people tend to go out, and if people are drinking or intoxicated, then their lower nature is more likely to come out, right? So that's why people have to be aware of these kinds of things. With a hard angle between Mars and Pluto, this can lead to a lot of coercion of one sort or another. So, and because, like I said, Mars is in Leo, there could be this kind of attitude that is very arrogant and in one's ego. And let me see something here. Yeah, because Pluto is in Aquarius still, even though it's retrograding. It's going to go back into Capricorn in June, but it still is in Aquarius. That's why it's forming that opposition with Mars. So, yeah, definitely watch out for that one. And then let's see what other ones. There's a square between Mars and Jupiter, and this can simply mean that things are inflated, exaggerated. So Mars can be anger. So it's in a fire sign, and Leo is definitely very fiery. So be careful. You might not be the one doing it. And of course, the sun is in a fire sign as well. So it is forming a sextile with Mars, but still, there could be some people who overreact, and that could be what that square is all about. And you don't have to be one of those people. And if you witness it, that's another thing. If you witness people doing it, or they're doing it to you, you can diffuse the situation by refusing to add fuel to the fire. And another thing that I see here is a square between Mars and the North Node. Now, Jupiter is experiencing a conjunction between it and the North Node, and this is very fortunate because Jupiter has that magic touch, and so that might kind of balance that out. But with Mars, we're talking about our destiny with the North Node, and Mars squaring it off shows that whatever it is that we are challenged by and that we're fighting, maybe it is indicating that we're still in this process. It's still, the fight is still there for us to transcend. But Jupiter is an auspicious, that conjunction is auspicious. And I was listening to another astrologer, and apparently this is not something that happens all the time. So there's a significance with that. Now, there's speaking of squares, other squares that are happening that are connected to money. Venus is squaring the North Node. And also, Jupiter is squaring Pluto. With the square between Venus and the North Node, we're talking about this moment in, our destiny. And, what does that mean now? Just like when we have these transits, they're transitory. They're only temporary. Same with the North Node. It's for this time. This idea of fate is kind of enticing because it seems like it's meant to be. But sometimes what is meant to be is meant to be for a season. And sometimes we have these very frustrating, challenging times that we might fear will last a lifetime, and they're not. They don't. And this is an example of that because we have squares that are connected to financial matters. And by the way, whenever you have like a hard angle between Venus and another planet or Jupiter and another planet, it doesn't really mean that everything is just doomed, because these are called benefic planets, and that means that even when they're challenged, even when they're retrograding, they can still be major blessings in our lives. I definitely think that emotions will be heightened when it comes to relationships. There's a square between Venus and Chiron. And so, like I was saying, with Venus being in Cancer in particular, there is that very clingy, you don't love me, self-pitying type of emotion that can come up in relationships. And people have to remember that it's all within yourself. So whenever you're looking for somebody else to prove to you that they love you, you first have to prove to yourself that you love yourself. And then you can look to other people. And by then, you won't need any proof from somebody else. Because I think the truth be told, that people who don't show love, they don't likely have love for themselves. And so there's no way that they could do that, but it's no reflection on you. That doesn't really give people much comfort when they are in that situation where they're dealing with infidelity. They're dealing with someone who they got married to. And I'm only saying marriage because sometimes people think if they actually get legally married, that it's almost going to sprinkle fairy dust on their relationship, and they'll never have to deal with the other person cheating on them or neglecting them emotionally. And it, sad to say, there are no guarantees when you get involved with somebody, especially if you're getting legally married, hoping that that's going to change anything, that you're going to have that kind of relationship. And again, the theme here emotionally is actually about freedom. That's what Sagittarius represents. So when you have a full moon and something might be coming to a crisis point, you have to ask yourself, do I feel free within this relationship? And freedom doesn't mean just my partner, quote unquote, allows me to go out with my friends alone or allows me to travel by myself or whatever. It's not just that. It's about allowing you, and I'm always putting that in air quotes, to be yourself. If you feel that you are possessed by someone, that you're a possession of theirs rather than a partner, then that can feel very confining. And for some people, they may discover that That's not what they signed up for. And just in areas other than relationships, the idea of truth. What is truth? We do have an opposition. Well, right now it looks like we have a trine. I thought there was a hard angle to Neptune at this time. There's a trine from Venus to Neptune. The trine is easiest flowing angle. And that is good for spiritualizing relationships, meaning that you're not just looking to that other person to be something for you on the material level, on the practical level, or even with your emotional fulfillment on the mundane level. This is the spiritual, the ideal level. So recognizing soulmates and things like that. I suppose that because the moon is so moves so quickly that it will eventually form a square with Neptune, and same. Well, the sun is not moving that quickly, but the moon, and because of that, there will be a time when during this full moon period when the moon is squaring off to Neptune. So really understanding that sometimes our feelings are coming from illusion or delusion, and a distortion, and therefore a distortion is important. So this does not just have to do with relationships. This can be due to the things that you want out of life. So you have to be very careful when you're choosing, that you're choosing wisely, that you're not choosing just in your emotions. Even though Venus and Mars are not in the same sign, they are forming a conjunction. So that makes for a very spirited time. You know, that might actually be very good for a Saturday night where people want to just have fun, and things like that. So anyway, I hope that you guys have a great time. Remember that the strawberry moon is named that way. A lot of these names that I give are from North America, but they mentioned the honeymoon in Europe. I didn't get to see why it was called that. But the strawberry moon is because that's when the strawberries are ready to be picked. I've already been eating strawberries for a couple of months because in California it's a lot warmer. So they're probably talking about strawberries from colder climates. But in Florida grows strawberries too, and I had some from Florida earlier in the late winter. So anyway, just have a great time. I hope that everybody is, feeling liberated, not feeling stuck, because that's a bad feeling. That we don't want to feel like that. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.